All right, welcome to a new live show with Dave Lee. Welcome to my channel. This is Dave Lee on investing. Today we're going to talk about an investing framework, and I'm going to address kind of like the investing frameworks we have, but we're going to look at particularly one investing framework from investor Peter Thiel. He has 7 questions that every investor should ask before they invest in a company. So we're going to look at that, examine it, and apply it to our own investing frameworks. Hope you enjoy the show. All right, so we have an exciting kind of new video here. I've got a few parts actually to this video. So today is going to be part 1. We're going to look at the 7 kind of key questions that Peter Thiel asks in his investing framework. This comes from his book entitled 0 to 1, Notes on Startups or How to Build the Future. This book was written in 2014, several years ago. And it goes over, I think, kind of an interesting framework to look at. 7 questions every investor should look at. All right, so Peter Thiel, he kind of addresses in one of his chapters this question of why did the clean tech companies back kind of in the 2000s, late 2010s or so, why did they kind of fail as a whole industry? And so if we'll look at this, this chart here that he shows in his book here, in 2003, right, this RENEX, the Renewable Energy Industrial Index, was at pretty much about 300, let's say, okay? And then it kept on rising, so it hit about 1,000 in 2006, the index. And then in 2000, let's say 7 or 8 or so, it hit a high of 2,000, and then it just kind of crashed down. And here you have in 2012 or so, it hit a low of maybe like 200 or so. So Peter Thiel asks this question. He says, okay, why did all these clean tech companies, right, with renewable energy, fuel, solar companies, etc., why did they just like spike and this completely crash? And so in answering this question, why clean tech failed, he comes up with a framework, and he says, these companies neglected one of these 7 questions. And this is what he says. He says, why did clean tech fail? And conservatives think because once green energy became a priority, the government, it was poison. But he says there are actually better reasons. And he says most clean tech companies crashed because they neglected one or more of the 7 questions that every business business must answer. All right, so we have Peter Thiel. Now, Peter Thiel is a bit of a controversial figure because he's been vocal in his political stances. But what I want to do is I think a lot of times our own personal kind of views on people, on their politics, etc., can kind of cloud our just openness to examine their thinking and their thought processes, right? Like I personally don't agree with Peter Thiel's investment in Palantir. They're kind of a company that's really helping the U.S. crack down on to me, it's an infringement on privacy, and there are fundamental disagreements I have with Peter Thiel in different ways. However, regardless, I have an open mind to examine his thinking, right? I think that is what I'm doing here in this video. The main point is when you examine other investors' frameworks, it allows us to sharpen our own thinking and our own frameworks, right? And so we need to look at how are we investing? What are the questions we're asking? What are the priorities, right, we have? And when we compare it to other people's frameworks, that helps us to kind of poke holes and see if there are any weaknesses in our own frameworks. All right, so 7 key questions. Don't neglect a single one. So this is kind of Peter Thiel's investment philosophy that he shares in 0 to 1 book. And he says if you neglect one, then the company can really fail. So here are his 7 questions. The first thing is an engineering question. He asks, can you create a breakthrough technology or just breakthrough technology instead of incremental improvements? And in his book, he says, only when your product is 10 times better can you offer the customer transparent superiority. So his first kind of criteria is, A, are you going to just be kind of slightly better, right, than other people in your category, or are you going to be like 10 times better? And he kind of narrows it down where he says you need like a technological breakthrough, right, a major improvement. I kind of disagree with this because I think a lot of times the end product it doesn't necessarily have to be a pure technological breakthrough per se. For example, Apple is kind of, they pride themselves at being at the intersection of science and humanities. And I think sometimes when you combine certain things together, they kind of make a breakthrough, right? And it's not just technological. But however, that's his first question. The second question is a timing question. He asks, is now the right time to start your particular business, right? So he asks this question. He says, entering a slow-moving market can be a good strategy, but only if you have a definite and realistic plan to take it over. The failed clean tech companies had none. So what he's saying with these clean tech companies, like these solar and renewable energy, etc., they were entering a slow market of renewables and clean tech, and the technological improvements, for example, in solar panels, just weren't happening that fast, and they never happened really that quickly. And when you're entering a slow-moving market, you really need like an amazing strategy, right, to compensate. And he's saying the clean tech companies didn't have that, right? They were kind of like thinking that it was going to be a fast-moving industry when it wasn't. All right, the third question, and this is one of the key points of Peter Thiel's 0 to 1 book. He says, are you starting with a big share of a small market? So Peter Thiel's kind of whole business philosophy is he thinks that every company should aspire to kind of have a monopoly in their market, albeit a small market, right? And so whether you have like, your market is 100 people or 10,000 people or 10 million people, he thinks you should be a monopoly, meaning in the sense that not that you're doing illegal things to like cut out competition, but rather you have such a far superior product and you have such a big market share in that market, no matter how small it is, that you dominate that market. And here he says customers won't care about any particular technology unless it solves a particular problem in a superior way. If you can't monopolize a unique solution for a small market, you'll be stuck with vicious competition. So Peter Thiel wants companies to avoid competition in the sense that he doesn't want them to go head to head in a super hyper competitive market. He rather have them go and tackle a niche market, right, a smaller market, and completely dominate that market and grow from there. All right, the third question is a people question. And he says, do you have the right team? So he says clean tech executives were running around wearing suits and ties. This was a huge red flag because real technologists wear t-shirts and jeans. So I think this could be a reverse bias too. Just because like someone's wearing t-shirt and jeans doesn't mean they're a real technologist either. But however, he does point out something, he says like, hey, if your priority is product and your priority is technology, are you going to really put all this priority in looking good? And this is something, I kind of, I find interesting. There's this company that some people have been asking me about. It's called Illumina. And they do DNA sequencing machines. And they're kind of like the market leader. They own the majority of the market for DNA sequencing. So if you want to sequence a DNA, you probably will have to buy a Illumina machine. And they're based in San Diego. They're a large company, large market cap. And I was listening to several interviews by their CEO and going through the annual reports about a month or two ago. What I noticed is they're extremely kind of like a sales-driven organization. Not that sales-driven organizations are completely bad, but I noticed that their priority is like on preserving their patents, right? And their IP, and they're really strong on like pushing sales, right? They're a very enterprise like company, and I was missing kind of like the breakthrough, kind of like nitty gritty of kind of the product enthusiast, right? The garage kind of like technologist, right? I just didn't get that vibe from Illumina. And I know, they have great machines, etc., but it's just something that, I look for also. I want to see that the potential of are they really investing right in the right things? Number 5 is a distribution question. Do you have a way to not just create but deliver your product? So Peter Thiel says selling and delivering your product is at least as important as the product itself, right? You can have a great product, but what if nobody knows about it, right? What if you don't have the way to market it, to deliver it, right, to distribute it? And there are a lot of examples of this. There are a lot of inventors who create these great products, but they just don't know how to get it out. And sometimes when you have the right distribution or marketing channels, you're able to connect to the right customers. All right, the 6th question is durability. And his whole question here is, will your market position be defensible 10 to 20 years into the future? Right? And this is something that I talk about a lot in my channel. My philosophy is your product superiority something that is defensible? right? Can you defend it over time? And Peter Thiel, in his book, he says every entrepreneur should plan to be the last mover in her particular market. That starts with asking yourself, what will the world look like in 10 to 20 years from now, and how will my business fit in? Right, so it's this long-term vision of seeing like how you're able to dominate the market even 10 or 20 years into the future. The last question that Peter Thiel asks in his investment philosophy is number 7, the secret question, right? And he says, have you identified a unique opportunity that others don't see? And he says that great companies have secrets, specific reasons for success that other people don't see. Now, I actually think that this number 7 is actually probably the most important one. Actually, someone just commented about my mic. Actually, I have the wrong setting here. Let me go ahead and switch it over. All right, so hopefully that's improving. Give me a thumbs up if you think the mic is actually just improved radically. All right, so number 7 is actually what I think is one of Peter Thiel's unique kind of angles, and I call it here the key insight. Right? And the key insight here is every company or successful company needs a secret angle, needs to look at something in a way that other people aren't looking at it. Means they have a secret type of approach or values or way to connect to the customer or insights into the customer. There are various types of insights. And I'm going to do an entire video on this concept of number 7, secrets, because I think it's actually one of the most underappreciated and underestimated kind of principles in investing. So hopefully that will be my next episode. All right, so here's a summary of Peter Thiel's 7 questions here. There's an engineering question, right? Is this company able to really innovate, not just make incremental improvements? Is this company, do they have the right timing? Does this company have a big share of a small market? Do they have the right team? Can they distribute their product? Durability, can they be a market leader, right, even 10 to 20 years in the future? And number 7, do they have some secret insight, right? Some secret that other people aren't seeing or understanding. All right, so what I want to do is, I think a lot of this stuff can be theoretical and kind of heady in a way, but I think to apply it, we need to apply it to real life, present day companies, right? And this is going to help us to kind of really understand what his 7 questions are really about. All right, so I want to take Netflix first. All right, so Netflix is an interesting company. If you've ever looked at Netflix, I recently had a chance a couple weeks ago to dive into kind of the annual reports and their investor relations section of the website. And initially I was thinking like, hey, why didn't Netflix, like for example, come up with a Zoom competitor or a YouTube competitor? And I was looking into kind of the ethos and the focus of Netflix. And they describe their focus so well. And the focus of Netflix is really on content. They really want the best and most convenient content. And that's kind of their whole focus in Netflix. So let's take a look at the 7 questions applied to Netflix. Number 1, do they have engineering innovation? Well, I think initially, yeah, they did, because they actually were the first to come up with massive, right, scaling of streaming technologies that could handle, millions and millions of people. Of course, other companies did it, but Netflix was successful with that. Also, they're innovating with how they create content. So they're using data of what people are watching, and they're using that to seed, right, new content and new episodes, new shows, right? And so it's a data-driven content model, which is pretty interesting. Right timing, yeah. Netflix, they moved over from DVDs, right, to streaming exactly at the right time. They moved over to content, right, at the right time. They've been right at the right time when they needed to be. Do they have a monopoly? Do they have a big share of a small market? Well, they did, right, with DVDs, with streaming. And now it's becoming kind of a crowded market, right, with Disney and Hulu, all these other companies kind of vying for it. But yet they still have a dominant position in the video streaming market. Do they have the right team? Yeah, I think Reed Hastings, their CEO, he's like a very sharp guy, right? He knows how to execute. He knows how to keep focus, and that's part of I think keeping the right team. Do they have distribution? Yes, right. They've been they know how to market. They know how to re-engage their customers. Word of mouth, give incentives. Will they be here in 10 or 20 years as a market leader? And I think there's a decent probability that Netflix could be a market leader in 10 or 20 years. And what's their secret or opportunity? I'm going to be talking about this tomorrow a bit more. All right, let's take another look at another company, Facebook. All right, how do they stack up in the 7 questions that Peter Thiel gives? First, do they have really in engineering innovation, right? Are they doing incremental? Are they really advancing stuff? And I think Facebook definitely has innovation, right? They have some of the smartest engineers in the world. They pick the best of the best, but not just that, they have aggressive goals, right? They're able to really roll out massive, social networking, massive scale with what they're doing. A lot of people underestimate the difficultness of scale, right? Handling billions and billions of people, and it's massive. Do they have the right timing? Yeah, right. They've always had the right timing with Facebook, right? They overtook MySpace, but also with Instagram, with WhatsApp, with messaging. Right now, there's a big issue with TikTok, right? That Facebook might need to deal with. And I'm going to be doing a whole video on Facebook in this week, hopefully. Do they have a monopoly, a big share of a small market? Yeah, social networking, right? They're just dominating in that area. Do they have the right team? Yeah, Zuckerberg, Sandberg, right? They have execution really down. Distribution, right? They're already distributed, right? And they can distribute new products to their customers. Durability, will Facebook be around as a market leader 10 to 20 years? Very likely, unless they're hit with antitrust action. A secret opportunity, I'm going to talk about this a bit more tomorrow. All right, let's take another example of Tesla. How does Tesla stack up? All right, so I have to give credit to Peter Thiel in his book, because in this book, actually 0 to 1 by he wrote it actually in 2014, and he came up with these 7 questions, and he actually applied it to Tesla in one of his chapters, and he says Tesla meets all 7 of these questions, and he basically predicts Tesla's going to be a successful company back in 2014. So yeah, props to his prediction back then. First, with engineering innovation, yeah, Tesla is really pushing the envelope, right? They're really not just incrementally improving the car, but radically transforming the car through engineering innovation. Right timing, yeah, Tesla had the right timing to ride the cost curve, right, of battery prices going down and battery technology. Do they have a big share of a small market? Yeah, I think this is one of the key market strategies that are underappreciated with Tesla. Tesla always has known that they need to be the market leader in whatever market segment that they go into. For example, with the Roadster, they were the market leader, right, on high-end, right, small electric sports cars. With Model S, right, high-end, right, cars, market leader. Model 3, Model Y. And so whatever market Tesla goes into, they know they need to be the biggest kind of leader. They need to take over the market. And this is kind of one of the key principles. The right team, yeah, put Elon Musk with a bunch of executors, right, with ambitious goals, and you've got the right team. Distribution, yeah, Tesla goes directly to their customers. And these cars actually are kind of word of mouth instruments, right? Everyone who drives around a car is just advertising that car, right? So it's more distribution. Durability, is Tesla going to be around 10 or 20 years as a market leader? Yeah, I mean, definitely, that's my opinion, and it looks very likely. And the secret opportunity we'll talk about tomorrow. All right, Virgin Galactic, taking some of these companies that I get frequent requests for. Virgin Galactic, engineering and innovation. Yeah, I have some question mark, because you have to compare it actually to like other people in the industry, like compare it to SpaceX. And it's like, yeah, I don't know if they really have the engineering chops that SpaceX has. Right timing, yeah, perhaps they're in the right timing, right? I mean, space business exploration, all this stuff is just in the beginning stages, right? It's really inning 1, right? And what is this going to look like 20, 30 years from now? It's just mind-boggling. Number 3, do they have a big share of a small market? So Virgin Galactic has chosen to identify kind of space tourism, right? To get people to go into space for a short period of time and through their vehicles. But this market, yeah, I don't think they have a big share in it, because it's a non-existent market, but it's going to be in existence. But SpaceX can easily get into this market too, right? I mean, the space industry is limited because, for example, the satellite launch business is just not generating enough capital for SpaceX. That's why SpaceX went into Starlink, right, to generate more capital. And if space tourism takes off, SpaceX will definitely, I think, be there and take over that market. So I think Virgin Galactic has, a tough road ahead. Do they have the right team? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they have sure they have Richard Branson and Chamath, but I don't know if they're really the best people with this technology. Distribution, sure, I think they can market, right, their tickets to go to space. Durability, 10 to 20 years is Virgin Galactic, right, the market leader in space, and I highly doubt that, right? And their secret opportunity. So anyways, this whole thing is a big question mark, Virgin Galactic. All right, Nikola Motors, right? This is another company that's just kind of caught people's attention. They're going IPO, or they kind of switched over to a ticker symbol. And yeah, what engineering do these guys have? They can tout engineering, but they don't even have a product that's out, right? So do they have a big share of a small market? Well, what market? Like they don't I mean, sure, they're trying to come up with a semi truck and other stuff, hydrogen, etc. But I just don't see like they're really executing the right way. And then sure, they might have a decent timing right now, even though they're about 8 years late in terms of releasing a product. Distribution, they have decent coverage on the internet, but durability in 10 or 20 years, is Nikola Motors really going to be a market leader, right, in vehicles? And this is just a big question mark. And this is actually like why it just does not excite me at all, Nikola Motors. Let's do another example. And this might be, this will be kind of my last example before taking questions. Square. So Square is a company headed by Jack Dorsey, financial services, for small retailers, but also they do a peer-to-peer app, right? Cash app that offers a lot of banking features as well. So first thing, do they have engineering innovation? Well, they're the first to kind of come up with that small card reader, and then they're progressing kind of incrementally a bit, but trying to give a full solution, right, to small retailers. And with their latest Cash app, right, they're trying to basically give all these banking features to the underbanked. And so I would say, yeah, they're doing a decent amount of innovation. Right timing, yeah, they're doing with peer-to-peer kind of banking transfers. They're right at the moment, right, they need to be, especially to gain the traction, right? Venmo and Cash App are taking over at least the US. Number 3, monopoly. Do they have a big share of a small market? Yeah, again, with the retailers, I think they do, but I don't know if it's growing as fast enough compared to, like, for example, Shopify's market of online sellers. But I think their big share of the small market is their peer-to-peer Cash App. The right team, I think they do. Distribution, they go directly, right? Their app store, they're the top 10 app in the app store, word of mouth, etc. They distribute well. Durability, in 10 or 20 years, will they be a market leader? Now, this is a bit of a question mark because they go head to head with, PayPal. They go head to head with Shopify. They go head to head with Apple and with Google. And yeah, who's going to win in this crowded field, right? And it's going to get crowded. It's going to get more intense. There'll probably be some takeovers and some nastiness, and what will happen in 10 or 20 years. It's not as clear to me as, for example, a Tesla opportunity, where in 10 or 20 years, right, I see very clearly Tesla as a market dominant leader. All right, so let's take some questions. If you can, if you have some questions, go ahead and what I want to do here is kind of take it on the fly and say, you can go ahead and ask a question, like, for example, if I can apply these 7 questions to, let's say, another company or a company of your choice. You can go ahead and just, start out the question with all caps, question, : and then I'll go ahead and try to answer as many questions as I can. Before we do that, tomorrow is SpaceX's planned launch of 2 human astronauts into space. It'll be, I think, about 9 years since US astronauts boarded a US made rocket into outer space. And so this is just an amazing achievement by SpaceX to get to here. So it's an exciting time. It's going to be tomorrow, I think, at 4:30 Eastern time or so. And here's an interesting quote Bill Gates shared, and lots of other people have had similar quotes like this. But he says, most people overestimate what they can achieve in a year and underestimate what they can achieve in 10 years. Right? And I think this is kind of the crux of why I like to invest in innovative companies, but not just innovative companies, but the best of the best. Companies that have truly superior products and that can defend their product superiority over time, because that innovation compounds, where it just gets better and better. You're able to apply it to more and more areas. And sure, it might not look like a big thing in 1 year or 2 years, but when you apply it out to 10 years, the innovation just completely compounds, right? And you're able to just make immense leaps and bounds. Like, for example, Tesla in 2012 was kind of like just an electric car company. But Tesla in 2020, now they're applied their innovation to autonomous driving, right? They're on the verge, whether it be like 1 or 2 years or 3 or 4 years or 5 years, who knows? But with autonomous driving, AI software, they're applying their innovation to battery manufacturing. They're applying their innovation to charging, and they're applying their innovation to the whole business model, to solar roofs, right? To power walls to the whole home integration. And this innovation just compounds over time, and it surprises you of what these great companies can do in a 10-year period. All right, so let's go ahead and let's take a couple questions here. V. Patel says, question, can you apply these 7 questions to Zillow? All right, so we got Zillow. So we had a great interview by Gene Munster here on my channel a few weeks ago, and he suggested people, or he said he was interested in Zillow as an innovative company. And so let's go over the 7 questions. Does Zillow do they have the engineering and the kind of innovation rather than incremental, right? And I think in some ways they do. I mean, they're the first and the best with kind of online listings, with the whole Zestimate kind of model. They've branched off to mortgages. They've really made a ton of tools for realtors and brokers really to advertise on their system. So yeah, I mean, that's how they beat out, right, everyone else, is by coming up with a better product. Right timing, right? They're right there, right, with real estate, and they've been there, right, as the go-to app, at least in the US, to find real estate, to track new listings, etc. Do they have a big share of a small market? Well, it's now a big market, right? And they took over. Zillow bought Trulia, their second, place company. So they do have a large share of a now big market of online real estate. Their next biggest competitor, I believe, is Redfin. Right. All right. Do they have the right team? I mean, their CEO's been with them for forever. They execute well. Do they have distribution? People are on their apps so much, right? Browsing listings, and that in a way is a distribution where they could push whatever they need to push. Do they have durability 10 or 20 years out? Yeah, is Zillow going to be kind of the market leader 10 or 20 years out? I would say, yeah, it's a good possibility that Zillow does, continue to execute and does do that. And what's their secret or their opportunity? And this is actually kind of like a question mark. Like, what is the key insight that Zillow has, right? Is it that people are just super interested in browsing, what's out there, and Zillow wants to give the best real estate browsing experience? I'm kind of unclear exactly what their edge is over, let's say, Redfin or others. And the other question I have with Zillow is like their profits, or not honestly the profits, their revenues have kind of like flatlined over the past few years, and they've started to use this whole thing of Zillow offers, where they're buying out houses outright, and that's increasing their revenues, but they're not making any money off of kind of buying out houses right now. And so I kind of question a little bit on their business model, if they've really figured out how they're going to grow the revenues over time. Currently it's mostly, I believe, on advertising, right? They're allowing brokers, realtors, etc., using their platform as an advertising platform. All right. Thank you, V, for your question there. All right, Fiverr has been attractive to me, and you mentioned it recently in a previous live stream. I wonder if you could give your bull-bear thesis and general thoughts. Okay, let's look at Fiverr. Okay, Fiverr is an online kind of job marketplace website. It's a competitor to Upwork, formerly Elance. I have to disclose, I do own some shares of Fiverr, bought a couple months ago. Let's look at what Fiverr is. So engineering innovation. Yeah, I mean, I think Fiverr is executing well. They're based out of Israel. They have some smart people. I've listened to some of their bunch of CEO interviews, etc. They kind of know what they're doing. I'll jump here. Their key insight or secret insight is they think that rather than doing an auction system for jobs, which Upwork is doing, they think that fixed prices and a simple kind of quick checkout system. So for example, if you want someone to make a website designed for you, rather than doing this complicated bidding process where you get like 30 or 40 bids and you have to interview all these people, Fiverr makes it easy. Like you have people, website designers with ratings, right, and reviews, and you just kind of like check out, you click yes, I want this, like 5 pages, right, and in 3 days, and you just are done with the process. There's like no complication, right? And that's the key insight that Fiverr had, is that people value their time, right? They want simplicity over the complicatedness of freelance work. And so they've ridden this key insight and they've really driven it home. And that's kind of the whole essence of Fiverr. Right timing, they're right at the perfect timing with online kind of freelancing jobs, and with the whole pandemic situation, like Fiverr is just right at the right place at the right time. Do they have a big share of a small market? Yeah, it's kind of like the online freelancing market is so fragmented. Like Upwork had the best shot at it, but they just, I don't think, have been executing that well in knowing kind of how to progress, right? Fiverr has been executing better, and they're really presenting even enterprise options. So it's not just for small people, small kind of people looking for, let's say, small jobs. They're actually going after big companies as well to offer kind of enterprise services, and Fiverr kind of understands that they need to go bigger. Do they have the right team? Yeah, I mean their team is actually pretty smart. You know, they have a smart CEO, you know, based off of interviews, etc. Do they have distribution? This is kind of a question mark, right? They've been marketing heavily, and they spend heavily on marketing. And I don't know if their word of mouth is as strong. I mean, they do claim actually word of mouth is one of their biggest things. So maybe they have distribution. Durability. Are they really going to be the market leader of online freelancing in 10 to 20 years? This, I do have some question marks, right? Personally, I just don't see like another company that's executing better than Fiverr, because I think Upwork could do that, but they just don't. But I think this is a ripe market for a new entrant actually to come up and execute better than what Fiverr is doing. So yeah. Fiverr's had a big run in the past few months, several months. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? All right, Jan says, I follow Minarak for quite some time now. I think their laser community technology is great. Do you do the 7-step analysis in the future? Yeah, I don't know much about or anything about Minarak. Actually, there's a lot of stuff where the technology is just kind of very particular and specific, and unless like I'm a real like expert in that area, it's extremely difficult for me to really dive into it myself. And sometimes I might try. For example, there's some people going into like oil tankers as a trade, and I started to look into it a bit, and it's just such a unique particular market where it's like, do I really have an edge on understanding oil tankers, right, and inventory and all this stuff, how they are made, their cost structure, and do I really think that this is like an innovative industry, right? It's like, yeah, it just doesn't excite me that much. All right, question. Mike VBS says, in the 7 questions, this applies to the ability to expand into side market opportunities. Without this growth, might peter out in 10 to 20 year time frame. Yeah, so, you know, I'll kind of like explain kind of a bit more of Peter Thiel's thing is when you get into bigger markets, it gets more competitive, right? And as it gets more competitive, your execution like gets tested, meaning if you can't innovate and execute at the level of the world's best companies, then you're going to get eaten up, right? And that's why a lot of companies, they appear to be growth companies in the beginning, but later on they just peter out. It just kind of, you know, fans out, and they never realize the gain. So that's the biggest actually risk in growth investing, is you invest in a company that looks great, right, but their growth doesn't get realized in the future, and then your stock price gets hit like crazy. And that's why I think Peter Thiel's investment framework is a bit interesting. I think it's missing a couple things. And my whole thing is, I think the biggest kind of area is they need to be having a clearly far superior product, right? That is better than anything else on the market. And he kind of mentions that with the number 1 point. But I think that's the most thing. And they need to be defensible over the long term. And that's number 6. All right. Let's go ahead and this next week is going to be an exciting week. Tomorrow, I'm going to go ahead and talk about what I think is the most exciting kind of principle from Peter Thiel's framework. And it's the key insight, the secrets that companies have. And I think a lot of investors don't really take this seriously, right? And I think there's a part of it is a philosophical endeavor. Like, what does this company see or CEO see that others just don't see? And how does that lead to an investing advantage? So we'll go through a bunch of examples of different companies. What is their key insight? What is their secret that this company has that other companies don't have? And why is this an advantage, or let's say not an advantage for these companies? That's going to be a video hopefully I'll do tomorrow. And then later on in the week, I'm going to examine Facebook as a potential investment. Will Facebook go to $1 trillion market cap? How do you value a company like Facebook? What are its future kind of risks and potential ahead? stay tuned for that, and we'll probably do another video here on different topics. So anyways, have a great day today, and then tomorrow make sure to tune into the SpaceX launch at 1:30 Pacific time, 4:30 Eastern time. I'll be on there. Maybe I'll do a live show or something before that on a different topic, or maybe I'll just do a prepared video. But anyways, have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you guys in my next video. Thanks.